we don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what
And welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm Bill Plante. Very busy day today on Capitol Hill. We'll go to congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes in a moment. And Politico's Patrick Gavin and Ann Schrader-Mullins are also here to dish about last night's radio and television Correspondents' dinner. But first, it's been 3 weeks now and a few days since the president finally told Congress exactly what he thought should be in the health care reform bill. Weeks of acrimonious debate a lot of the time about the changes particularly which the House of Representatives want to make to the Senate bill. There was one big problem during all of this. No one knew exactly what those changes would be until today. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has finished its review of the proposed bill, and this morning it's posted online. And the House vote should now come Sunday about noon, I think. Nancy Cordes, what's the latest?
Well, we actually, Bill, just got those changes a few moments ago from Speaker Pelosi herself, who's holding a press conference to unveil this final of final bills that they will take a vote on Sunday, first in the House and then presumably in the Senate. And as you mentioned, this new final bill costs $940 billion over the next 10 years. It cuts the deficit by $130 billion over the first 10 years, $1.2 billion over the second 10 years, and extends coverage to 95% of all Americans. So it goes a little farther to extend coverage than the original Senate bill did, and President Obama heralded the new bill today, says it does more to cut the deficit than any other piece of legislation since the Balanced Budget Act of the 1990s.
Well, he was out there crowing about it this morning before he signed the jobs bill in the Rose Garden, and we saw a number of members, Democrats, in the halls of Congress earlier today talking about it, just elated because they think that these numbers mean they'll be able to get the vote. What do you think?
Well, they like the numbers and they like the other changes to the bill as well, because among the other things that this bill does, it removes some of those special deals like the Cornhusker kickback that were so embarrassing for Democrats. It also closes the Medicare prescription drug donut hole by 2020. That is something that the Senate bill originally did not do. So that's something that will be very popular with seniors. And it also significantly scales back the excise tax on high-priced insurance plans, those so-called Cadillac plans. That ran into a big problem with labor unions. They were very upset because a lot of their members get very generous insurance plans. And so now they're actually only going to be getting about 20% of the revenue from that excise tax in the first 10 years that they originally thought they would under the Senate bill. So they're going to have to make up that revenue from some other taxes.
So time for a couple of reality checks. First of all, none of this is likely to make any difference to the Republicans, is it?
Absolutely not. In fact, they were coming out with some of their harshest rhetoric yet just this morning after they found out about these CBO numbers, saying, you know, it doesn't matter how much it reduces the deficit. It's still a $1 trillion bill no matter how you cut it. And we're going to do everything that we can to kill this bill, either in the House or in the Senate. If the bill passes the House, then when it gets to the Senate, we're going to throw up as many points of order as we can on the Senate floor to try to block this bill and force Democrats to go back and rewrite it.
And apart from the partisan politics, what about the actual money itself? This looks like it saves some more, but it still spends an awful lot.
It does spend a lot. It spends nearly $1 trillion over 10 years. But what Democrats say is, yes, we do spend a lot of money, but we bring in a lot of revenue as well. And so this bill basically pays for itself and then some in the first 10 years by a little bit, $130 billion. But over the second 10 years, that's when we really see the savings. That's when we see that it cuts the deficit by nearly $1 trillion. Now, Republicans say this is all gimmickry, that they're fudging the numbers. But these are numbers that come from the Congressional Budget Office, after all, and they are generally considered nonpartisan and the last word on these budget matters.
Right, but don't some of those savings in those out years depend upon future Congresses maintaining some of the cuts that are being made and some of the spending?
Absolutely. It requires Congress, for example, to go ahead and say, yes, let's take the action to put that excise tax into effect when it finally is supposed to come into effect in this bill, which doesn't take place until 2018. And the bill does not include important things like the doc fix. That's the fix that Congress has to make every year to make sure that doctors don't see their payments from Medicare slashed by 13, 14, 15%. This bill doesn't deal with that at all. That's a very expensive fix that can run into the hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's something that the Democrats just chose to ignore, essentially, because their numbers wouldn't have worked out if they had put that into the bill.
So it'll depend upon the willingness of future Congresses to continue the doc fix and other pieces of the bill. So ultimately, you're taking this on faith, right?
Absolutely, although it looks at this point like Democrats are going to take this leap of faith simply because if they don't, then they won't have anything to show for a year's worth of work, and that's not going to look too good in the midterms in November. Of course, for many of them, voting for the bill won't look too good in their conservative districts in November either, but they're really between a rock and a hard place at this point, Bill.
Well, Nancy, thank you very much. We'll continue to watch the developments here, and we'll watch you tonight on the evening news explaining this in even more depth.
I'll give it a try.
Okay, joining me now, Politico Click reporters Patrick Gavin and Ann Schrader-Mullins to talk about some of the highlights and lowlights of last night's radio TV Correspondents' dinner. Was this really a big gala? I mean, was this one of the big Washington dinners? Come on.
Technically, I'd say it's junior to the White House Correspondents' dinner, which is a big dinner, and then this is number 2. So I guess it's sort of a gray area. It is a big dinner, and it's not a big dinner. It's sort of, yes, you wear your black tie, and yes, you'll have your Fred Thompsons and the Donald Rumsfelds, but no celebrities are there, and it's very relaxed on a Wednesday night. I think people just sort of go and talk and have fun and think nothing of it.
Well, was it any good?
It was good. I think following on what Ann said, the one thing that the RTCA dinner benefits from is low expectations. There aren't a lot of celebrities there. The headliner isn't as big. There aren't 7 days of parties. So a lot of times they actually turn out to be quite fun because it's more casual. There's probably less of the ego shuffling that you might have at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Joe Biden gave the kind of stand-up routine that you would expect Joe Biden to give with mixed results. Joe Wong, who's sort of unknown to a lot of people in that crowd, did quite well. I think he definitely exceeded expectations, and people who didn't know who he was are definitely glad that they know who he is now.
I'm betting that a lot of the people who are watching this know who Joe Wong is, but that Washington audience didn't.
Correct. He's big amongst on college campuses. He's big in Boston, where he's from. But people my age and I think above, I don't think had any idea who he is. But
it's funny, you don't look that old to me. Yeah.
I feel it. I am on the inside.
Okay, you talk about Joe Biden. Let's take a look at some of Joe Biden's humor. Here's one line that we all kind of went, whoa.
It is good to be with you all. I have to admit, I admire the skills required to be an anchor, a commentator, a talking head. I think you got a pretty tough job. But occasionally, I am surprised by your lack of self-awareness. For example, when Dick Morris is quick to point out every time I put my foot in my mouth, well, Dick, at least it's my foot.
Joe's going blue.
Yeah, I thought the audience was a little bit, a little bit shocked.
That was a risque line, especially for the vice president to say. Now, obviously, we're referring to sort of sexual misconduct on Dick Morris's behalf from years ago, but it was a situation of, I think people wanted to laugh, but it's sort of uncomfortable. But it's a huge zinger, I think.
And it was also one of many sort of zingers at Fox News' expense. He had another joke, I believe, making fun of Fox. And Fox put a ton of money into this very lavish pre-party. So I imagine that the Fox representatives in that audience weren't laughing too hard at those two jokes.
Well, look, any publicity is good publicity, right?
True.
Right.
I mean, you guys do an awful lot of around town stuff. You know that.
Although I do hope that I never have the kind of publicity that involves a foot in my mouth and not my own.
Here's another one that came from Biden or Biden's writers last night, which was, pretty good for a Washington audience. Listen.
I do have to defend our administration a little bit here, especially the Recovery Act, which I've been put in charge of. Republicans keep saying it hasn't created a single job. Well, tell that to Senator Scott Brown.
Okay.
I thought that was a good line.
Yeah.
Scott Brown was there. He was avoiding reporters. I'm always surprised about the people who show up to the Radio TV Correspondents' Dinner and don't want to talk to reporters.
I'm surprised about any member of Congress who doesn't want to talk to reporters.
And he cut in line. He's
And he cut in
already
line.
apparently so important that he doesn't have to wait in line.
Wow.
I'm not sure he had a bow tie on either, did he? I think it was a...
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
Okay, let's talk about the sort of topic that's under the rug here. The president wasn't there. The president hasn't been at many of these dinners. The only one I think he went to last year was the big White House Correspondents Association dinner.
Well, I think last year he made a huge effort to at least appear. He did go to the Radio TV Correspondents Dinner and to the White House Correspondents Dinner. I think he sort of spent his first year saying, "I'm going to do your usual things," and I think in his second year he's saying, "Okay, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore."
Does this send a message that all this stuff is getting a little old?
I can't see how it does it.
Well, also I think it's disappointing for the party regulars because there was this feeling that in the 8 years of Bush didn't really go out. He didn't really stay out that late. He didn't drink. There was this hope amongst the party circuit that Obama would be different. He seemed more fun and more hip, and he would go out and he'll have a beer once in a while. And the reality is that he's probably just as boring as the rest of us are, and he probably wants to go to bed by 10 and doesn't want to hang out with journalists until 1 in the morning.
Doesn't want to hang out with journalists? I can't imagine.
It's very
such a thing.
disappointing.
I'm shocked. Shocked. Well, I'd like to thank you both very much. Are there any final thoughts about last night's party?
Mark Foley.
Mark Foley was sort of the surprise head turner there. We had a chance to talk to him and completely happy to be back.
Not in on the joke about himself.
Right.
In Washington.
Most people in Washington aren't in on the joke about themselves, just in case any of you were wondering.
Just goes to show you wait a couple months, you wait a couple years, Washington will always take you back.
Ann Schrader-Mullins, Patrick Gavin, thank you very much for being with us. And thank you for watching Washington Unplugged. I'm Bill Plant. Have a great day.
If we don't expand our imagination,
Justification for being what you are.